today's the 3rd of Jan. And this video comes off the back of a conversation I had over the weekend. And to get straight to the point, it seems as if I'm talking about people that are around 40 years old, no? I'm talking about guys that were born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s, right? And let's say the 2000s. It seems as if our parents, one, did not know how to love us. Our parents struggled. I know they know what they were supposed to do as parents. Kyk, ons ouers het geweet hulle moet vir ons kos gee, hulle het geweet hulle moet vir ons groot maak en al daai. But ons ouers, for some reason, het nie met hulle trauma gedeel. And a lot of the time, their trauma, it bled out onto us. And in many cases, our parents, like, we should have been much more messed up than what we are right now, based on what our parents put us through. And I'm going to use a few examples of where I'm coming from. Like, a lot of our parents are divorced, right? And I think we were exposed, so the divorce might not have affected us that much. But what did affect us is how we as children needed to console our parents. Our children, in many cases, needed to be the adults because our parents weren't able to be adults for us. We had parents that thought that their form of discipline and even the application of that discipline is as if they didn't realize that it's going to have negative repercussions later on our lives. I mean, how many of us, I'm talking women, maybe even men as well, how many of us would have not have our first child if just hold on. This is a call. I just needed to take that call. A lot of us needed, in many cases, to be the adult for our parents. I mean, we were told things that our child ears were not ready to hear. Okay? Our parents used to offload on us emotionally. And our mothers used to tell us about our fathers. Our fathers used to tell us about our mothers. And unfortunately, we weren't ready to hear that. How many of us would not have had our first child if we had proper sex education from our parents? How many? How many of us were not equipped because the advice that our parents gave us was, alright, dan in jou broek, look sexy, look sex in my eyes. Do you know why the Cape Flats, our teenage pregnancy rate is so high? I'll tell you now, because till today, the way parents approach sex education is to say, nie in my huisie. I can tell you now, my first sexual experience was not in my mother's house. It was somewhere out there. It was in die gangetjie. And they thought that because you're not doing it in their house, somehow that is a win. And yes, guys, there are going to be people that's going to say things like, don't be so hard on them, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not carrying a grudge. But what I am saying is that in order for us to do better than what they did, we need to actually do better. We can't perpetuate the same behaviors that they portrayed in our lives and then wonder why things is not going the way it's supposed to. Why we are not seeing the success that we want to see. Why we are seeing repeated cycles from our parents. seeing repeated cycles from our parents. We are grown up enough. We are grown up enough to see what was a good example and what was a bad example. And this is the year that we need to start telling ourselves that, because us as grown-ups, right? Us as grown-ups, we need to tell ourselves that I'm going to follow that example, but I am not going to follow this example. And unfortunately, this is the year. This has to be the year where we are no longer going to use the way we were raised as an excuse for how we turned out. The way we were raised as an excuse for our bad behavior. This has to be the year, because tyd stap aan. We cannot blame our star signs. We cannot blame the area that we grew up in. We cannot blame our past relationships. We cannot blame the way we were raised. We cannot even blame, but I see my family as alcoholics. That is hoekom drink ek baie. We need to stop it, and let's make 2024 the year where we stop those things. Because one, we are adults. We are all adults. And we are responsible for our own behavior. And we need to get out of the pattern of making excuses for external factors. With external factors the reason why we are the way we are. And it's not something that might happen overnight, because we're talking about maybe years and years of bad habits. However, it's something that you need to start working on. And I can tell you now, your partner, your work people, your friends, and even yourself, you are going to thank me by the end of this year if you can put this into place. Stop making your New Year's resolution things like, hoe ek moet gaan gym en ek moet gesond eat. Make your New Year's resolution that you are going to break the cycles that is keeping you back in life. Break the cycles that are keeping you back in life. Because mommy and daddy, no, they had their chance. But for how long can we use mommy and daddy as the reason why we are not achieving the goals that we want to achieve?